G'day, g'day, it's Mathematical KM here, or Keith Malumbi, their initials not a title. And for my American friends who watch some of these videos, an Aussie saying, I've had an argument with a lawnmower for the haircut. Okay, playing the hippo with the white pieces. Please don't look at that graph. This is kind of, in many ways, it's my favourite hippo so far. We just don't want to look. Please don't look at the man behind the curtain at the end. And yet there's an interesting lesson for me right there as well. So, let us take a look at this very interesting water horse game. Okay, we fianchetto. That's already interesting. He's only gone one step forward in the middle with his e-pawn. We fianchetto. Okay, so he's built that structure, but it's only taking half of the big space in the middle. Now I've thought he's left it room for himself to fianchetto over on the king side. So it might be a little bit of a race. I'm getting my b-pawn out before he does to guarantee that I'll get that fianchettoed bishop, which is a slight change. Normally you'd go for one of these ones next, but so there we are. I've got both my bishops fianchettoed, working on getting the hippo structure. He develops his dark bishop so he can castle. There's my d-pawn forward, keeping the knight out, and it's a normal move for the hippo structure. He castles the e-pawn. Oh look, we're going to have light squared snipers looking at each other. And that's going to characterise the initial part of this game. Okay, so just keeping the b4 square away from black in terms of not throwing a check in on us. As predicted, we've got that light squared bishop, and this next one's one that I wouldn't mind a bit of feedback from the old chess giant, Solomon. Normally, we'd be throwing a knight in here. What I've noticed at this point in time is how much we would love that d-pawn to take our c-pawn. It's pinned. And not only is it pinned, the bishop's hanging, and after the bishop hangs, the rook's hanging. So, it's unlikely to happen, but we can take advantage of it and grab some space with that c-pawn. And we can, it's not like the problem's gone away. We can start piling some more pressure on that c-pawn. Because for now, until this situation changes, we can add the pressure. Okay, so he's moved the knight away. He might be move his rook soon. But again, we're forcing moves and we're developing. I kind of just got the standard hippo pawn move there. It gave some eval to black because it allows that black knight to that outpost. Unfortunately for me, he's gone the pawn structure instead, but it's also just made his dark bishop a worse piece, I would have thought. And tying things up on the queen side is not going to be the worst thing in the world for me. So what do we do? We're bringing this knight to where it goes normally, but I'm also thinking about getting it to f4, where it'll be one more piece, putting pressure on that d-pawn. Because even though he's moved a few of his own pieces, that bishop's still hanging, and after the bishop, well, I guess he could move his rook, but the bishop is still hanging. I guess my bishop's hanging as well, but really keep an eye on that diagonal. Okay, so he's covered his bishop, so now if I take him, he can take back with his queen, and the queen would be threatening my rook, so everything changed. And I was getting a little bit too smart for myself, really. If he takes my bishop, I can take back with that knight, but that knight can get kicked away. And so I was a little bit fancy and lucky to get away with that for now. But he's locked up the pawn structure. Now, probably the best thing I can do is to initiate that trade. And then I end up with his queen looking at my rook, but I decide to let's seal it in the middle. And now the bishops aren't so worried about looking at each other. It's interesting to see the computer is keen for Mark. Oh, a quick bit on the two players here. Myself, I'm weighing in at 1475, and Mark is at 1620. So what's that? 100 and then 145 uphill. But tend to have tight matches with Mark, so we'll see how this goes. Computer wants him to kick my knight away, but he brings a knight in of his own. And what's it threatening? That pawn's protected. Admittedly, oh no, by a knight and a queen. And that's no good, and that's no good. And that's pretty well protected. So yeah, I can see how computer didn't really like that for him. Now that was a mistake. And this is something I've fortunately got away with in this game. And, you know, normally it's me that's looking to trap an opponent's knight with the Hippo, quite often. Right now, it's not quite trap, but it's not good. But if he brings his pawn forward, only place it can go is here, and that is covered by a black knight, but it would be protected by the queen. So it gets a little bit messy, but I'm still not really happy. And the computer gives it a double question mark. And that double question mark is from G5, and starting that little would muck me around a bit. Happy he didn't do it to me. Okay, so he's threatening to open the pawn chain that we've got, the locked up pawns over on the queen side. And computer didn't like it too much. I don't mind this. If he takes, that's not a bad place for me to put a knight. A bit of an outpost. Can't be hassled by a pawn. And if his knight takes it, well, I can take towards the centre and it's still all locked up nicely there. So I'm pretty happy with that. Now, this gives me a chance to... You may have noticed this pawn's not protected. If I take that knight, he's going to have to double pawns there. And after he takes me, I know I can take him. And my pawn here won't get taken immediately because that's hanging. If he threatens that pawn, and then I can have 1, 2, 3 in a fairly... If you're going to have 3 pawns together, that's not a bad structure. So, let's do this. It's called a great move. He doubles, I take, he threatens the pawn. Oh, and getting that nice structure is called great as well. There you go. So, he's got doubled pawns. I've still got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I've still got all of my pawns. Got a little bit of a double, but it's not a bad structure with the doubled pawns there. He locks it up in the middle. One of the reasons he's played this is because at some point that would be threatening my pawn forward would threaten his knight, and my bishop would be on his bishop. Obviously right now it would be dumb because my bishop isn't protected. But he just takes all of those calculations away by moving his e-pawn forward. Okay, now not only is that a nice outpost, but there's no longer a knight here, so the knight's not going to grab it. And if at some stage somebody does kill this knight, then I can undouble my pawns and have a beautiful 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pawn connected island there. So that's a beautiful place for the knight. So just developing the knight. Okay, he's moved his queen back, obviously because it was under threat by that knight. And the knight also protects, the queen can't check the king there. This bishop's probably my worst piece, so wouldn't mind getting him over into the action somewhere on the king side. And my light bishop is also not the best piece in the world at the moment. I was kind of even at this point in time thinking about this light bishop 1 to getting it in there and then to here. And then that'd be a nice place for him. Probably some sort of a trade would happen at some stage. So, another way of getting that bishop across and active, and I thought of this as well, obviously it was pawn forward and then bishop to here, giving some action. He brings his h-pawn forward to stop my Harry from going any further. Get the bishop. So now my bishop's on a nice diagonal, controlling a lot of squares. The light squared sniper bishops are facing each other again. I think about, let's get my dark squared bishop probably to here. And if he wants to trade the bishops, well, fine, let's move my rook forward. He does. I do. He moves his knight back. That gives, it's opening his rook on this pawn. Interesting, he wants me to move my king now. Probably would have been not a bad idea. But I'll get my bishop to quite a nice outpost. Can't be hassled by pawns. And the idea being, if he does take it with his bishop, I can get a pawn out of the way of my rook. I'm starting to think about getting rooks and queens and things on the h-file down to Hasley's king. That's interesting. He's inviting me to undouble his pawns. If I take his bishop, his pawn will come across, and yeah, I'm not going to do that. But I do like the look of this move. If he takes my bishop with his, I can get Harry off the h-file, opening it up for the rooks. If he takes my g-pawn, if he takes Gary, then my queen can come in, and it's getting into that kingside attack that we're trying to develop here. He sends his knight around there. I can't see what that knight's looking at doing unless it's taking my knight, but that'll just undouble it, and I can kind of ignore that part of the world for now. So that's sort of just giving me a move. That's called a great move. Again, we are just trying to open lines of attack at that enemy king, because I've got a queen and a rook, and the other rook, it wouldn't take too much to get it across. Now, here we go. He does take the knights off. Okay, I've got that beautiful pawn island over there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I've still got 8 pawns. Shouldn't have been in my head, but it was in my head. Wouldn't it be nice to try and win a game and still have the 8 peasants? But yeah, that's not to be. Okay, so he throws in the check. I can see the bringing the bishop back. That is a good idea. It's not what I played. The one thing I am happy about is, and I did calculate this through, if I put my queen in the way, then he could take my queen. The king would have to come here. He takes my bishop, I take back, and he wins the f-pawn, and his rook is right in there, and it's not kind of how I want the board to look. So I worked out not to block with the queen. Bishop d2 would have been brilliant. Didn't really see that one, but I did come up with king f1. Just get the king out of the way. He hasn't got any more checks. and I can then proceed with my attack, I hope. So, King F1. Only the symbol it gave, and it was the second best move in the moves that it was. Let's go back. King F1 is second best move, and it gets the question mark exclamation. Anyway, second best, we've played it. Okay, so he does take the bishops off the board. And he brings a rook down. And I'll show you the main thing that I was calculating here. It's not what comes about, but I was thinking very much along the lines of I take, he brings a rook to here, I bring my queen, actually no. Okay, let's go through this. I take, he brings his rook across. I move my king to G1. I think it's very important that I do this. He takes the pawn, but does not come with check. I get my queen to here. If he gives me a check, I can take it with my rook, stopping his king from moving. And then my queen has got mate. So it does not work for black to bring a rook across. He's a move too slow if I take that pawn. That being the case, I take that pawn. Okay. He's threatening my rook, which would come with check. So I figure if I bring my rook across to D1, we've got the same situation, it's just his queen can't check the king. So now, let's see what happens. Okay, he's brought that rook across. And this is the first, and let's count these, because it's, I think, maybe has something to do with the title of this video. How many moves did I have a mate in? I've got mate in 9 on this move. And the mate in 9 move is Queen H5. I play Queen H5. So far, so good. Okay. His move was forced. Okay, I've got mate in 8. And it's Queen to H8. Played. So far, so good. Okay, he plays King to E7, it's forced. Mate in 7, this is the third move, and so far I'm playing all these moves, is Queen times G7. Played. Okay. He's played his king back to D8, and mate in 6, and I can see it, it's so obvious now, is rook to H7. Threatening to bring the queen across, pretty much nothing he can do. I should mention that at this point in the clock, let's see, this is move 34, I have 31 minutes on my clock, my opponent has 5 minutes. I should, another lesson to Keith is use that clock. Really think about these things. Getting the ball, the basketball, rolling around in that rim, not wanting to fall out of the rim. Anyway, we did not play the mate in 6. However, we are on a mate in 6 move. How would you count this? No, we didn't play the mate in 6. We played still plus 10.4, so it wasn't totally stupid. But we've only played 3 mate in moves. Okay, he plays queen down. And rook times E8 is mate in 18. And I believe I'll play this. Okay, he takes. This is use the clock, Keith. Really, really, really. And this is the lesson, something I've got to train and practice a bit. Bit fixated on removing this checkmate threat that my opponent has with queen takes f2. And the obvious way to keep the mate in 13, obviously winning and then winning the rook, is, you can see the computer's showing it here. Check with the queen. Don't care what he does with the king. I take his rook. And then I've got my queen here. I've got these pawns ready to come through. His queen might take my rook. I'll move my king, and my queen will be here. It's just, you can see it is mate in 13. The game does not go much further. I've played 4. 3 of them are in a row with the mate ins. And keep looking. Don't just have 30 minutes on the clock compared to 4 minutes of your opponent and not use those minutes. Is there another way to stop that particular checkmate threat? Queen takes e5 is obviously best. From mate in 13 to -6. Check, he has to take, check. And now it's -6, losing, and game is over. So, getting it right through to having my opponent at mate in, what was it, 8-7-6? No, 9-8-7-6, I think I took it through. Talk about let it slip. But in terms of the strategic play of the opening and the middle game, and even the kingside attack, yep, pretty happy with that game. Mark's nearly lost to me the last 2 games, so maybe that's why he's 150 eval up, but there's always next time, and I'll be looking forward to it.